Howdy, friends. Today we're going to talk about must, might, and may. Do you know the difference between these words? First, I want to talk about this word, assumption. Okay, this is an important word. Do you know what an assumption is? What does it mean if you assume something? I assume. What does that mean? Well, it means like a guess. Okay, we're kind of trying to figure out something when we don't have all the information, but we have some information, and so we're trying to make a guess based on the information we have, but the information is probably incomplete. Okay, so we're making an assumption. So look at this picture. All right, so wow, everything is pink in this room, right? The bed is pink, the walls are pink, this bedside table is pink. So we could say that person must love pink, right? That person must love pink. So that's an assumption, right? We don't really know if that person loves pink, right? We haven't met them. We never asked them, do you love pink? Maybe they hate pink, right? Maybe the person just bought that house and it had pink paint on the walls. Maybe everything in the house was pink, right? The person bought the house and they hate it. I mean, maybe they love the house and they're planning to paint the walls, and maybe they're planning to change the color of everything, right? So we don't really know. We're not 100% sure, all right? We're making an assumption on the information that we have, okay? So this is a very normal part of life. That's why this is a good English lesson. It might be a good English lesson for you if you don't know this word must, because we use this very often in English in situations. He must love that, or they must do this, or like here's another example. He must work out a lot. Okay, look at him. He's got big muscles and not as big as I have, guys. His muscles aren't that big. But his muscles are, they're all right. They're medium sized. So we could say he must work out a lot, right? We're making an assumption here based on what we see. And we're making an assumption on the frequency of his workouts. Okay, if we say he must work out a lot, we are assuming that he works out maybe every day, or maybe a few times a week, okay? But we don't really know. I mean, we could be wrong, right? Maybe he only works out once a month. Okay, so if you work out once a month, that's not a lot. So we have no idea. Or, what if we say this? He must love working out. Okay? Here we're making an assumption about his interests. Okay, well, actually we don't know if he loves working out or not. Maybe he hates it, right? Maybe the only reason he works out is because he wants to get a girlfriend. He wants girls to love him. What do you think? I mean, like, our assumption is based on what we're seeing. It might be a good assumption, it might be a bad assumption. But in reality, right? If we assume he works out a lot and loves it, that would be a safe assumption, right? If an assumption is safe, that means there's a very high chance that we're right. Okay, so yeah, if you and me, if we assume he loves working out, he works out every day or at least a few times a week, that would be a safe assumption based on the picture, right? I mean, his muscles I'll be honest, guys. His muscles are bigger than mine. I was just a bit jealous. That's why I said my muscles are bigger than his. That was a lie. I'm very sorry for lying, guys. Will you forgive me? Let me know in the comments if you will forgive me for lying. If you're very sure that it's a good assumption, like a safe assumption, you could say this: I'd be willing to put money on it. Okay, that means to make a bet. That means you're so sure that you're willing to put money, your own money, as a bet on the fact that you are right. Does that make sense? Now, most of the time when people say this, they're not really putting money on it. They're not really making a bet. This is just kind of like a phrase we use it's like a phrase we use to show our certainty. For example, you could say, the next iPhone is going to have 4 cameras. I'd be willing to put money on it. Okay, so I'd be willing to put money on it. It doesn't actually mean you're going to put money on it. All right, it's just it might mean that. You could mean this literally. All right, I'm going to put $100 on that. I bet you. If you're very sure, okay, that the iPhone is not going to have 4 cameras, and I'm very sure it will, and you and me are arguing about it, then we can just solve our argument by saying, let's put money on it. Okay, if you're so sure that the iPhone will not have 4 cameras, let's put money on it. That means you bet 100. Like we could say, let's put $100 on it. Let's put $100 on it. Right. So if you're right, I have to give you $100. If I'm right, you have to give me $100. Does that make sense? So yeah, but most of the time people aren't really talking about money here. Look at this. I think it's going to rain this afternoon. I'd put money on it. I'd put money on it. Okay, again, most people, when they're talking about the weather, when they're making their predictions, even if they're very sure, they're not really going to put money on it, right? So guys, when we use this word must, we're usually, we can use it for habits. Like if someone does something quite frequently, he must work out every day, right? Or we could use it on a person's interests. He must love working out, or she must love the color pink, right? We can also use this word kind of to describe other things, like, for example, a person's state of being. So look at this picture, okay? This guy is running. He's carrying his briefcase. This kind of a bag that businessmen carry is a briefcase. Okay, it looks like he might be wearing a tie. So, we might say he must be late for work. Okay, he must be late for work. So we don't know him. We're just sitting, and let's say you and me are sitting in a coffee shop, and we're just enjoying our coffee, and suddenly this guy runs past the coffee shop. I could say, he must be late for work. Okay, he must be late for work. That's an assumption, right? We don't actually know why he's running, right? He might be trying to escape from his wife. He might be late for a flight. Okay, he might be excited about something. Maybe he's excited. Maybe he's running somewhere because he's excited to meet his friend or whatever. I don't know. So we're just making an assumption that he he's late for work. Okay, so in this situation, we're making an assumption about his state of being. So what state is he in? Well, he is late. Okay, so that's his state. He's in a late state. That's why he's running. Okay, or we could say this, he must be a businessman. So here we're making an assumption that he is, he's a businessman, which means his occupation, right? You might see a person, you might say, wow, she must be a millionaire, okay? She must be a millionaire, okay? Then you're making an assumption about her wealth, right? She's very wealthy. We can make assumptions about everything in life, right? It's a very common part of life to make assumptions. Sometimes it's not good to make assumptions, right? Because sometimes assumptions are wrong. In fact, very often they're wrong. So maybe it's not good to make assumptions all the time. But like I said, it's a normal part of life, and it's a normal part of the English language. Okay, so we use the word must in this situation. Okay, so notice that the verb comes after the word must, and it's in its basic form. Okay, so she must be a nurse. He must like pizza. It must want food. Okay, if you are, let's say you have a cat, or you have a dog, or some kind of pet, we often use the word it with animals. Okay, so you could say it must want. All right, so imagine if your cat is meowing nonstop. Meow, meow. It must want food, right? Or it must be hungry or something, right? So we are assuming that the cat wants to eat, right? We don't really know, because we don't know we don't know what the cat is thinking. We can't understand cat language, right? So we're assuming. That's why we use the word must. It must want. Now, if we're not going to make an assumption, if we actually know, then we can take this word away, but then the verb changes. Okay, so look at this. Then it would be this. She is, or he likes, it wants. Right? So the cat, it wants food. Okay, if you say that, that means it wants food. Okay, you don't need to make an assumption, you know it. He likes pizza. You don't need to make an assumption. This means that you know already. You're 100% sure. Or she is a millionaire. Okay? That means you know it. You don't have to guess. Right? But if you don't know, like if you see a woman driving a really expensive car, you might take that piece of information about the car, right? You see it, you see that situation, and you say, she must be a millionaire. Okay? So it all depends on you, how certain you are, if you want to make assumptions or not, right? So notice, this is the normal way verbs are, right? She is. He likes with S. It wants, right? So if we're going to use the word must, then the S disappears. Then it's it must want. He must like. She must be. Right? The verb be is the basic form of the verb. But usually in normal speech, usually it's some other form. For example, you are, I am, he is, they are. It is. So is and are, those are actually just forms of the verb be. Be is the basic form of the verb. So when we use the word must here, the next word is going to be the basic form of the verb. Does that make sense? Now, if we want to put the word not in this sentence, where would we put the word not? We can put the word not right before the verb and after must. Okay? So she must not be happy. Look at her. She looks a bit upset. She must not be happy. Okay? Must not be. He must not like pizza. He must not like pizza. It must not want food. Okay, if you try to give your cat food and the cat doesn't want it, you can say it must not want to eat. It must not be hungry. Okay, so yeah, there it is, guys. Look at this picture. All right, let's say you work with this. Let's say this woman works at your office, and you see her every day, and every day she's drinking coffee. You could go talk to her one day and say, "Hi, you must love coffee. I see you every day, holding a cup of coffee. You must love coffee." Okay, then she could say, "Yeah, I do." Or maybe she'd say, "Actually, I'm drinking tea. Actually, I don't like coffee. I love tea." Right? So, we make assumptions in life all the time. Sometimes our assumptions are right. Sometimes our assumptions are wrong. And if you're pretty sure, then it's called a safe assumption. So if we assume that she loves coffee, I mean, that's a pretty safe assumption, especially if you see her going to, let's say your job, at your workplace, you have a coffee maker, like a coffee machine. If you see her going to the coffee machine all the time, well, then she's drinking coffee, right? So then we don't need to assume whether it's tea, could be tea or something else. So yeah, I mean, I would say it's a safe assumption to make that she loves coffee. Okay, now let's talk about these words, might and may. Okay, these mean the same thing. Might and may, and these mean probability. Okay, do you know what probability means? That means the level of certainty that you have about something. Okay, are we still recording? Yes, we are. Thank you guys so much for joining me. So, are you certain about something? If you're certain, you can say definitely, all right? If you're a bit less certain, you could say it's probably, right? She probably loves coffee, right? She probably loves coffee. She definitely loves coffee. Okay, that would be like saying she must love coffee, right? She must love coffee. Except now with these words, we're talking about we're talking about probability here, right? So possibly. Possibly. So look at this picture, for example. Let's say you look outside your window. You say, wow, look at those dark clouds. What do you think about this? If you saw clouds like this, what would you think? You could say, it might rain today, or it may rain today. Okay, both of these sentences mean the same thing, except might is more common. This word is much more common than this word. Okay, it might rain today. Yeah, it looks like it might rain today. Okay, so here, if you say this, it might rain, we're talking about maybe 10% to 90% certainty. Okay, so it's a wide range of certainty here. That's why this is such a common word, because we're in situations every day where we don't want to try to think about the exact probability of something. So we just say might, okay? Because if you say it's probably going to rain today, well, probably means, maybe 80 to 90%, right? Yeah, it's probably going to rain today. Or if you say, like, if you're only 10% sure, then you would say, it's probably not going to rain today. It's probably not. But it might. Okay, so might covers a really wide range of possibilities. Okay, now if you're 100% sure, then you can use the word positive. Okay, positive means 100%. Okay, you could say, I'm positive it's going to rain today. I'm positive. It's 100%. That means it's definitely going to rain. You are sure. You are positive it's going to rain. Or if you're sure that it's not going to rain, you could say, I'm positive that it's not going to rain. Okay, so then it means you're 100% sure that it's going to be 0% chance of rain. Right? It's not going to rain. So you're sure in either direction, right? I'm positive it's going to rain. Like, it would be a mistake to say I'm positive it might rain. Right? That sentence wouldn't make any sense, because positive and might are incompatible. They're opposites. Positive means you're sure. Might means there's some kind of, we're talking about probability, right? So just remember that in most situations when you're not sure about something, this is a great word to use, might or may, but might is more common than may. Sometimes there's really only two options, right? Like look at this sentence. He might win. Okay, he might win. Well, yeah, I mean, let's say he's playing chess. There are three options, right? He might win means he might win, lose, or draw. Right? If you play chess, there are three options: win, lose, draw. In sports as well, sometimes you have three options. Like in soccer, you have three options. You can win, lose, or draw. Unless it's a championship match, right? Like if it's in the knockout phases of a tournament, right? Like in the World Cup. Next year, in 2026, the World Cup is in Canada and the US and Mexico. So in the first round of the World Cup, it's possible to draw, but in the next rounds, well, there is no draw option. You're either going to win or lose, right? And some sports don't have any option to draw ever. Like tennis, for example. In tennis, you can't draw ever. You either win or lose. It's easy, right? So you could say he might win. He might win. I mean, it's just, you don't know. You're not sure. You're really not sure. But if you are sure, you can say, I'm positive he's going to win. Or I'm positive he's not going to win. Okay? But if it's somewhere in between the positives, then you can say might. Okay, he might win. Look at this sentence. I might be able to help you. I may be able to help you. So again, both of these sentences mean the same thing, except this is more common. That's how we talk. This is a little bit more old-fashioned, and it sounds a little bit more kind of formal, I would say. This is just the most common word we use in this situation. I might be able to help you. Okay, so we can also use these words might and may to ask questions. Did you know that? So look at this. Might I ask you a question? May I ask you a question? Okay, both of these are correct, and they mean the same thing. But which word would be more natural to use instead of might or may? Like if you want to ask someone a question, what would you normally say? You would use the word could, right? Could I ask you a question? Or can. Can I ask you a question? Okay, but these are pretty formal. They're very polite too. Might I ask you a question? Or look at this. Might I have another cup of tea? Might I have another cup of tea? May I have another cup of tea? Okay, both of these are very formal, pretty polite. But the most common way to ask this is could, right? Could I have another cup of tea? Or or can I have another cup of tea? Or we could use the word would I be able to? Would I be able to have another cup of tea? Okay. Excuse me, would I be able to get another cup of tea? Okay, that's how I would say it. If I were at a restaurant or a coffee shop, I would say, excuse me, would I be able to get another cup of tea? Or I would say, could I get another cup of tea? It just depends on how I feel, what comes out of my mouth. But one of those two ways would come out of my mouth. I would not say that either one of these. These are two. Hey, why are there balloons, guys? Happy birthday to you if it's your birthday. Thank you guys for always smashing that like button. Oh, I really appreciate it. So I would not use either of these, but if you're watching an old-fashioned movie, you'll hear these. But yeah, I would either say, could I get another cup of tea? Or would I be able to have another cup of tea? Okay. So there it is, guys. I don't want this video to get too long, so we're already almost half an hour into this. So let's just do some homework. I want you to make a sentence with must. All right. Make an assumption about something, anything. Okay. So leave your homework down there in the comments. I look forward to reading it. Guys, I love you very much. Hope you're doing great. Hope you're staying safe, healthy, and happy wherever you are. And as always, I'll see you over in the next episode of Mad English TV. Take care.